Is-
Here's your sound off because you're saying how the game on.
Yeah, I am. One moment, give me a second.
And it's the one that opened the door, right? This one, right? Now?
What? Yes, yeah.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Allston-Brighton Progressives' first ever candidate forum. Tonight, we are going to host a discussion with our incumbent District 9 City Councilor, Liz Breadon, and her challenger, Pilar Ortiz. My name is Caitlin Galouli, and I'll be moderating tonight's discussion. First, for those of you who haven't heard of our organization, Allston-Brighton Progressives is a chapter of Progressive Massachusetts, a grassroots organization committed to fighting for a vision of shared prosperity, racial and social justice, strong democracy, and environmental sustainability. Tonight's since we are a group of Allston-Brighton neighbors specifically, this November, our eye is closely turned to the District 9 City Council election. Tonight's forum is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube for voters that weren't able to make it tonight. Couple quick notes about the format. The questions are from hosts representing various neighborhood groups to make sure that we cover all kinds of issues and constituencies. I particularly want to thank both Allston-Brighton Housing Action and the Boston College Democrats for both crafting questions and sending representatives. We have about 15 or so open-ended questions that we're trying to get through, but we won't get to every issue. We're just trying to give everyone a sense of how the candidates think about and approach the major issues they're expected to face in the next 2 or so years for their coming term. We did close the chat box and reactions are turned off, just like for in-person forums that request no clapping, heckling, or distractions. And finally, we ask that everybody stays on mute so that there's not too much background noise. I'll call your attention to the timer cell, which is going to show the timer. We're giving candidates 2 minutes for opening statements as well as closing statements. And then we're giving 1 minute for answering our open-ended questions. If anyone has a follow-up or rebuttal, we may allow additional 30 seconds for discussion. We're also going to go through a couple quick rapid-fire questions where our candidates will hold up yes and no cards to indicate their position on an issue. And we're going to keep both candidates Zoom spotlighted for the entire discussion, as well as whoever is asking the questions. Finally, we just really want to sincerely thank both candidates for their participation. And we will begin now with opening statements. We flip the coin in random order. Liz Breadon, you may give your opening statement first.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the organizers for Progressive Mass, Allston-Brighton chapter, and other organizations who've helped organize this today. My name is Liz Breadon, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a physical therapist by profession, and I have served on the Boston City Council for 6 years. I was first elected in 2019, just at the end of the last Trump administration and just before COVID hit. I've moved to Boston. I'm an immigrant from Northern Ireland. I'm a physical therapist by profession, but in this past 6 years, I've committed myself to working for this neighborhood and all the great community that we have out here. I got involved in local political activism when I first came to the neighborhood in 1997. I see so few of my fellow conspirators on this call this evening. Got involved in trying to save our library, which was slated for closing, make the presentation school, which was closed by the Catholic Church, to save it and keep it as a community resource. I was involved with the Historical Society. There was a group called the Green Space Advocates, etc. And in that time, I wasn't a citizen. I didn't become a citizen until 2008. But I got involved in politics and volunteered on many campaigns, including Sheriff Cabral, Deval Patrick, and Bernie Sanders, don't forget him. So the things that prompted me to run for city council was my disgust and frustration with how housing was being developed in the neighbourhood. We had thousands of units of housing approved or in the pipeline, but many of them there were studios and one bedrooms. The AMI was set at 70% of the area median. Whereas the folks who live in Allston-Brighton, their median income in this neighbourhood is 45 to 55% of the area median income. And we didn't have a lot of more diverse representation on impact advisory groups. They tended to be the same folks serving on impact advisory groups. So when I came into office, one of my
Just so we can make sure to get all the questions, do you mind just wrapping up your opening statement?
first objectives was to diversify the folks that represented the neighbourhood on impact advisory groups to approve development in the neighbourhood. So, and that's the housing was the biggest issue. Thank you.
Ms. Ortiz?
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for taking some time from the rain and hopefully not getting too wet out there, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Pilar Ortiz. You may or may not know me. I am a 17-year resident of the neighborhood. I originally came to study at Boston College, so I was one of the many students that you see up and around Com Ave in that area. But I fell in love with the neighborhood because I stayed every summer besides my first summer. And I got to see what this community is really about, seeing kind of the different intergenerational work that has been happening for many decades before I came, and the benefits I was able to see from that. Now, this is not a sudden decision. My running, I really wanted to start doing this when I was about 10 years ago, when I was 24, 25, because I saw that our representation was not interested in, or didn't take the time to really converse with people of my age. You know, we're no longer college students, we're professionals out there contributing to our communities, our society, and not seeing anything really there for us. You know, I'm a Girl Scout leader. I suddenly became interested in, I didn't suddenly become interested, but I suddenly really made the effort to get involved in our local politics because I had been talking the talk to my Girl Scouts and telling them to be involved in the community, and I saw the need to, you know, walk the walk for myself. From there, you know, I really took the time I got involved in the WOO campaign. I was one of the head organizers, along with, I can see Siobhan here, for the Mayor WOO campaign here in Allston-Brighton. I joined her transition team, and from there I was an advisor in the mayor's office, and I spent the last 3.5 years working as the chief of staff for the law department. From that work, I really got to see the ins and outs of government, what it takes to get things done, what you can't do, and the ways that you can really navigate the red tape. Now, my goal here is to bring every generation of AV together. We are a diverse group of people. We are seniors on fixed incomes. We are students. We are young people trying to start a family here. And I think together we can do something and really change the tide for what we've seen in the last couple of decades for Allston-Brighton. Thank you.
Thank you both for your opening statements. We'll get right into the questions and start with some citywide issues before we dive down into specific neighborhood stuff.
Could I interject? I've just got a message that there's folks waiting to try and get on and they're having difficulty.
Caroline, you mind just checking if we have anyone in the waiting room?
Yeah, I don't see anyone in the waiting room right now. But when they try to join, they should pop up. I've been seeing people pop up as they've tried to join.
Respond to the RSVP?
Yeah, so if they're trying to join through the Zoom link, they should pop up in the meeting room, and I should see them.
Let's try to see if we can send it to them. Okay, thank you.
I'll just interject. I was the one who posted that in the discussion, and I did reread. I did have the link, so it was there. It was my reading error. So it's there.
I was my first time setting up one of these Action Network events, so it also could have been I made it not as clear as it could have been. But let's get back to our questions. Hopefully everyone's finding their way in, but certainly if the problem persists, be shy and raise your hand and let us know. Great, so we're going to start with some citywide issues. And first we'll start with sort of the elephant in the room. The Trump administration has made massive cuts to the social safety net, leaving states and communities to fill up the gap. How should the city prepare to adjust to federal cutbacks, such as cutbacks in SNAP and other crucial funding? Are there budget line items that should be reevaluated, or where might we find some funds to compensate for the lack of federal funding? Oh, and we will start here with Pilar Ortiz, and we'll switch order from question to question.
Okay. Yeah, of course. I mean, we've seen Boston be in the crosshairs, and Liz and I, we actually answered a similar question on BNN the other night of, what is it that's going to be happening here? Regardless of whatever the city does, we're always going to be a target because of how kind of opposite we are from the federal government and their viewpoints of how our society should be built. When we're looking at cutbacks, it's definitely a partnership with our state. We only have the ability of collecting a certain amount of taxes every year. We actually have a cap on the total amount that we can get. I was actually asked a really good question the other day, and it's hard to dig up, but the amount of money that every neighborhood contributes. So we need to be careful on how we're raising those funds without impacting our homeowners. And obviously the renters, because I'm a renter, our rent contributes to property owners' taxes or how they pay for that. When we're looking at the state, we really have to be a little bit more just upfront on how we're doing this. We need to be prepared. We know that they're going to cut things. And when we delay the type of conversations that we have, we need to make sure that we're getting ahead of the issues. So for example, with healthcare, and then when we're looking at the city budget, there's always opportunities when we're looking at kind of the way that departments are allocating different funds without looking necessarily at personnel cuts. So I would be careful of cutting personnel, but looking at more of the line items that they are spending on.
Thank you. Councillor Breadon?
Thank you. I think the threat of cuts to food security are really serious. Not only will there be direct cuts to our city budgets and through the state, but there will also be the knock-on and ripple effects from cuts to many of our big institutions like Harvard. Harvard has lost $2 billion from their budget this year. And that will have a knock-on effect in terms of our local small businesses and our just basically our local economy. So we're watching for that. The SNAP benefits, one proposal that we have put out on the table along with Councillor Roussy-Louisiane this week was to look at alternative models for grocery stores. I know in New York they're looking at public funded grocery stores. We had the Daily Table, which was a low cost grocery store, which has gone out of business. We were hoping to sort of ramp that up and make it more available across the city. And then we're also looking at trying to, as to Pilar's point about revenue, we have to seriously look at other revenue streams in the city. We cannot continually rely on our homeowners and our residents to pay the budget. 53% of the property in the city of Boston real estate property is not taxable. It's owned by the federal government, by state government, city government, and then also the nonprofits. And everyone thinks that sort of the pilot program, which is payment in lieu of taxes that applies to our universities and our hospitals, that they should pay more. And I don't disagree that they should pay more, but actually in the scale of things, there's so much other property in the city of Boston that is not taxable, that it's a tremendous burden on the residents of the city. So one thing that we've been talking about over the last several years is just looking at different revenue streams that may bring in some money to help that.
Next question. Okay, great. How would you improve upon and accelerate the mayor's efforts at combating climate change, making Boston climate resilient and moving towards green jobs and a green economy? And this time we will start with Liz Breadon.
I think back to the money again. A lot of I always say that Allston-Brighton is further inland from the coast, for like neighborhoods like East Boston, Charlestown, and South Boston are going to be much more danger of inundation with stormwater, not seawater rising, sea level rising. It's unlikely we're going to see sea level, salty seawater in Oak Square. But I really do feel as we did prepare for this storm that came in this weekend, thinking about stormwater readiness and being able to manage if a storm comes in and sits over us for several days and drops 10 inches of rain, we're all going to be in serious difficulties with flooding of basement apartments. So I do feel that we have to think about resilience in terms of our below grade apartments need to be prepared so that they don't get flooded. We need to work on our stormwater infrastructure. We need to think about permeable parking spaces and parking lots. We need to make sure that we can reduce the heat island effect that we see here in Allston-Brighton. We have pretty intense heat island effect in Allston. When you go from Allston across into Brookline, there's a sudden change. Green leafy boulevards in Brookline, and we have just got asphalt and tarmac macadam and very few trees that are looking anyway healthy. So we have a lot of work to do in terms of just increasing our green space and preserving the green space that we have.
Great. It's the same question, Ms. Ortiz. How would you improve upon and accelerate the mayor's efforts at combating climate change?
Yeah, I think one of the first things we need to be doing, because while Oak Square may not flood, a lot of other parts of the neighborhood, including where I am, I'm in North Brighton, the little known area of the neighborhood, connected to Lower Allston. We are right next to the Charles River, and actually we do see a good amount of flooding when you're starting to see, if you walk along the banks of the Charles, you do see the water rising. And it's just a matter of time because these things all connect. Obviously, rivers feed into oceans, the ocean starts rising, the river starts flooding, and there goes my backyard, along with many others. So when we're looking at this, it's looking at making sure that our foundations, our homeowners are able to prepare those foundations for that basement flooding that was mentioned, making sure they have the resources. Boston Water and Sewer has done a fantastic job of providing kind of free projects for homeowners, including like removing lead pipes from your house, really expanding on that kind of effort. We also need to take into account kind of moving away from our gas infrastructure into electric, making sure that we are removing the necessity for that type of natural gas and moving towards other energy options, which the city has already begun to do, but we need to do a lot harder. And one day, as much as I love cooking on a gas stove, I know it's not healthy for individuals who breathe, and I know it's not the best option for the environment, that we need to move around that.
Great. Thank you both for your comprehensive answers. Moving on, and we'll try to stick a little closer to the 60 just because I want to make sure we have some really good questions from some guest speakers that I want to make sure we get to. So apologies, because so far all the answers have been extremely thoughtful. We just do have to stick to a bit of a schedule. On to our next question. Immigrants across the country and here in Boston are at risk. Boston already passed the Trust Act and state budget proposals, including an immigrant defense fund, since immigration court does not have public defenders like criminal courts do. What else can the city council, or community do to protect our immigrant neighbors? And we're going to start this time with, I think it's Pilar's turn to go first. Yes,
it's my turn. I think one of the things that we could do is, really take a look at BRIC. BRIC, for those who don't know, is kind of the main infrastructure of information sharing within policing here in Boston. We have something called a gang database. The gang databases across the country have been proved to not be actually useful. It's really relying on surveillance. And a lot of times the way that it works, the point system, is very poor. And it does, we have all of these inequities when it comes to Black and brown folks and other people of color. You can get points for wearing the wrong color hat, being in the wrong part of a neighborhood, talking to somebody who is associated with a gang who's not through the same system. So it's very unreliable. And now, while this may seem kind of like a greater policing violence kind of initiative, those databases get used in immigration courts. And in the way that the courts are set up, there's no way for someone to defend themselves on it. Actually, you can be put on that list and you wouldn't even know about it. And these accusations that can happen from even SROs, the police officers in schools, can affect someone's ability to remain in this country and be deported. So while we're looking at different options, I think that's one area that hasn't been explored that really needs to be tackled for the multitude of reasons of how it could help our citizens.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. Councillor Breadon, same question.
Thank you. I think the Trust Act has, since it was instituted in 2014, has done a good job in trying to draw a line between our police department helping immigration enforcement for just like the civil issues, preventing that, but also, in the event of having a dangerous criminal here, that the police department will assist the immigration department with that. And I think the one thing that concerns me recently, we had this surveillance ordinance that we found out months after that the police department were using new technology to surveil social media and that they hadn't informed the city council. So we ended up having a vote and voting it down to say, there is a review process for introducing new surveillance technology. They introduced it without telling us, and then we said, right, you need to go before the review board and have them look at this. So I think they can't have it both ways. If they want the Trust Act to work, then we as citizens have to have confidence that that the police department is complying with the regulations that we have that curtail over undue surveillance of our communities and our residents. The other thing that I think is very important is we've put $50 million into a fund to help legal fund support. And I also think that one thing that's very distressing is that ICE and border enforcement and these folks are wearing masks. We have no idea who they are. They could be just copycats, people lifting people off the street. I think we should ban face masks in the city of Boston.
Ms. Ortiz, do you agree with banning face masks for police?
I agree for police. I think it's having to write very nuanced legislation for that. Because yes, no police officer should be covering their face. You know, they are here to serve us. But we want to be careful in being.
Sorry, it's not for the police department, for ICE and border enforcement.
For ICE, sorry, that was my.
Yes, for policing, for those who police our communities.
Thank you for making that important clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Moving on to our next, we're going into some hyper-local questions now. We will start with Cleveland Circle. I'm sure everyone's really excited to talk about that. Cleveland Circle is a complicated and potentially hazardous areas, especially for pedestrians and cyclists. Multiple efforts are underway to improve both safety and transportation in the area, but persistent problems remain. What concrete steps would you prioritize to make Cleveland Circle safer for pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers, keeping in mind the unique challenges from trolley tracks and jurisdictional overlap between city, Brookline, and state through the MBTA? And for this, we are starting with Councillor Breadon.
Yeah, I seem to have lost my place on the. Yes, Cleveland Circle. We've been working very closely with our elected officials, our state rep, and our state Senator Brownsberger and Representative Majority Leader Moran to have them help really work with the state agencies. And then we've been working with the Boston Transportation Department to ensure that we can get everybody on the same page, get everybody in the same room and get some action. We have an assurance from the MBTA that they will be fixing the potholes close to the tracks and making the area safer. And they will also undertake street marking. The biggest issue really is from the city's point of view is that they're not allowed to repair the asphalt within 3 feet of the track. So that's why it's sort of been put to one side from the city point of view. But the other thing that's going to be happening in the next period of time, I don't know when, but they will be bringing in new cars for the MBTA, which will require that the tracks be taken up and relayed because they will need a less severe turn. They have to have a bigger radius for turning. So there will be some significant track work being done over there, probably within the next 10 years. So, but in the meantime, as we talk to our elders and our road users, we really have to fix the asphalt and fix those potholes and make it safe as possible as a temporary sort of band-aid in the meantime.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. Same question. What concrete steps would you take to make Cleveland Circle safer for pedestrians and cyclists and drivers?
Thank you. Cleveland Circle, I think, is one of the main reasons why 10 years ago I wanted to run for office. I came to Boston in 2008, and Cleveland Circle looks exactly the same as it did when you're looking at those tracks, when you're looking at those roadways, and you see other parts of the city get much better and faster fixes for their issues. You know, we need to repave that intersection. I understand the issues between state agencies and the city, things like that, but that's not a unique issue to see Cleveland Circle. That happens throughout the entire city. So we wanted to make sure that we're repaving the adjoining roads, looking at repairing damaged sections of sidewalk and curbs. Our curbs are pretty much in a state of disrepair. If you're crossing just from across the park, it's exceptionally dangerous. You look at the mess of cars that are going all over the place, and it can be exceptionally rough because a lot of the intersections actually don't match up with the lights. We're also seeing that the intersection is too short. It got changed a couple of years ago, and now there's not enough time, especially for our elders, to be able to cross the street. We're looking at needing to add in trash cans. You know, we have so many spots there that we have litter, we have trash cans from the businesses out on days that may not necessarily need to be out. Want to make sure that we're keeping that in mind for our rat issues. And then on top of that, looking at loading sites for the businesses. We have the liquor store there. We have, all these businesses that need to have access to that. And right now the liquor store uses a handicap ramp to load in the alcohol in there. That's not acceptable. It's not easy for the business, and that's not accessible for our residents. And then of course bike lanes. Wanting to make sure that those bike lanes don't fall over, and making sure that they actually have safe ways of means of getting to where they need to go.
Great. Thank you both. We have one final very deep dive Allston-Brighton question. And this one, as you might even predict, involves the Jackson Man campus. The Jackson Man campus in Allston-Brighton has undergone significant changes since the closure of its K-8 school in 2002, I believe. The city's vision includes a new consolidated school and a revitalized community center, but progress has been slow, and local stakeholders remain active in advocating for robust investment and a facility that addresses longstanding community needs. How will you ensure that the new Jackson Man campus receives timely and sufficient investment, reversing Allston-Brighton's unfortunate history of underfunding important neighborhood facilities? And for this one, we are going to start with Pilar Ortiz.
Thank you. Jackson Man, many opinions, many thoughts on our community center. We need one. Obviously, we are one of the few. Jackson Man was the first city-run community center in the city of Boston. So that's notable, and now we're in the spot that we are. Again, it stands as a symbol of having these long conversations, and government work does take long. But even coming from me, someone who worked in the law department, it actually doesn't take that long when you have very effective and loud leadership that's advocating for the community. We need this. We are fourth when it comes to population of children from 0 to 9 and 14 through, and teenagers, excuse me. And somehow everybody thinks that we're all college students. Everybody thinks that the colleges will support us. And we are seeing that 10 years of underfunding when it comes to the capital budget with the same leadership for the majority of those years. One way of being able to bring that money back in is to really put down the money from the pilot program. BC has only provided 23% of the amount that they're supposed to provide. That, if you put that into the pilot program, it's as if you only have to pay 25% of your taxes. If you're only paying 23% of 25, that's like you're paying 5% of your taxes. I don't think anybody in this room has that ability to do that. So really laying it on to the institutions that are not doing their fair share and haven't been, this has nothing to do with the Trump administration, haven't been for decades, to really be good neighbors to us and be, as BC says, men and women for others. Also, full disclosure, I'm a BC alum, but.
Thank you for your response, Councillor Breadon.
Yeah, the Jackson Man's K-8 school closed in 2022, and the Horace Mann School for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing closed in 2024. In the anticipation of those two schools closing, we were talking about, since I came into office, I was raising that issue about, okay, the schools are closing, we need a community centre. Allston-Brighton is the second largest neighbourhood in the city after Dorchester. This district, District 9, has one barely functioning community centre. District 1, which is East Boston, Charlestown and the North End, has 8 community centres, including 2 pools. This is a long-standing disinvestment, underinvestment in the community in Allston-Brighton, going back decades. I mean, going back 50 years. It is not a recent occurrence, but right now, when we looked at the last sort of 10 years of capital investment in the neighbourhood, in the capital budgets, going back in the last 5 to 10 years, we are pretty consistently in the bottom 2. And it is time to change that. Allston-Brighton is the same size as the city of Somerville, and with approximately the same area and approximately the same population, and we deserve better. So we are getting their attention. We had a really well-attended public hearing, council hearing last fall. We had over 300 people turned up, and we managed to get a commitment from the Wu administration to get the ball moving, and they're studying it, and they're looking at different options for how we could redevelop the Jackson Man community centre site. The other thing that's to be of note is that the Jackson Man School is one of the younger schools in the whole of the city of Boston. And we had decades of deferred maintenance because we would look at the capital budgets. There was money allocated or asked for appropriated and never spent on maintaining the roof and keeping the school in good repair. And that's why we've ended up with a school that's just barely usable at the moment, the school building that's barely usable. And it's a matter of urgency because we have a huge population that needs a community centre, and I'm hoping that we can move that forward quickly.
Thank you. Thank you both. We're going to move on now into the housing portion of our discussion for the evening. When Allston-Brighton Progressives polled its members at our very first meeting earlier this year, over 80% of the neighbors that showed up cited housing as their #1 issue. Because this issue is so important, we decided to bring in some subject matter experts, and we are handing off the next few questions to our friend Brandon Stanaway from Allston-Brighton Housing Action. Take it away, Brandon.
Thank you, Caitlin. And Abundant Housing Massachusetts just released a poll of 550 Boston residents that corroborates that point. They say that 80% of those respondents say that housing is their biggest concern right now. So we'll start with a couple of questions about affordable housing or income-restricted affordable housing. So what are your ideas for expanding income-restricted affordable housing in Boston and minimizing displacement? And what tenant protections would you advocate for? Councillor Breedon. Yep.
Well, yes, we need to build more income-restricted housing. We need to build more lower and middle-income housing. There are many tax breaks and assistance for building low-income housing, but when you come into sort of workforce housing and more middle-income housing, it's much more difficult. So you go from this able to build luxury housing and able to build low-income housing, but there's really a problem with getting funding to build middle-income housing. So I would say that we're working in the past few years with the CDCs and with the Mayor's Office of Housing. We have managed to preserve doing the acquisition program to try and preserve naturally occurring affordable housing and take it out of the speculative market so that it continues to be affordable over time. The other thing that I would argue for is to look at rent stabilization. And then also, I know there's a hearing order to look at the use of triple deckers in the city on small lots. That's a way to add, multiple units of housing in a very small space. And that was the sort of quintessential affordable housing that was built 100 years ago, but it was taken out of zoning because they didn't want immigrants living in it. So, there's a whole racial history and a classist history of where and how housing can be built in the city of Boston. So I feel that, right now we need to really look at rezoning to see if we can add some density, but also look at it very comprehensively, because if we don't build housing, we have to make sure that we have access. We have to have housing that's affordable and big enough for families. A lot of the housing that's been built in Allston-Brighton in the last 10, 15 years are studios and 1-bedrooms, and you can't raise a family in a studio or a 1-bedroom. So we're really, yeah. So
Yep.
anyway, I could talk all night, as you know.
Yeah, there's more questions, don't worry. Pilar.
Thank you, Brandon. Of course, we have made inroads with affordable housing. The administration has done. You need to set the timer, by the way. Whoever's on timer. I'll wait. For the sake of equity, or fairness. So we want to make sure that we are, we've made the work when it comes to affordable housing. We're going to continue on that. Obviously, the administration is not abandoning that at any time soon. Unfortunately, there aren't too many city-owned plots where we can really, in Allston-Brighton, where we can really see some of the changes that we've seen in other neighborhoods, but anything that we can do when it comes to providing more grants for middle incomes. You need around $200K to be able to afford to buy a home in the city of Boston. And there's plenty of programs when it comes to lower incomes, and I do not want to remove any of that. Absolutely put more energy into that, but also looking at the middle income people who still cannot afford a home in Boston. When it comes to tenant rights, looking at no-fault evictions, getting a notice to up to 90 days, making sure that we have the right of first refusal should the owner of a building, for example, like my house, if my landlord ever decides to sell, I would love to get the chance to get that a timely notification to be able to buy. And then, of course, rent control. That's a question that if anybody sees people walking around with clipboards, they might be going around trying to collect signatures for rent control, taking a look at that as well, which obviously has been tried at the state level, but we have to continue pushing on that so that we have the ability to do that in the city of Boston.
Thank you, Pilar. Can you name a specific housing policy from a neighboring municipality that you believe has successfully increased housing supply? And what would be the first steps you would take to implement a similar policy in Boston? Pilar.
Ooh, my answer to this is usually not a neighboring one, actually, because I think we are all kind of stuck with the same state issues. And I don't know that we've necessarily been that any community has really been that successful with it. Um, frankly, because honestly, you have to go pretty far to find affordable homes in the Boston metro area. But an area that I am very passionate about and to looking into is looking at kind of the tiny home communities that have been built. This is very much more far out west. It is kind of seen in other parts of the country. But when it comes to our homeless population, which is another strain, I know it's not exactly the type of housing that most people are thinking about, but it is still it's one of the main pathways is because our housing situation is so bad that you are just one payment away from becoming homeless. So looking at that, being able to create that infrastructure, whether it's the tiny home communities of being able to bring some level of respect and dignity to these populations, and also to make sure that we're looking at, again, these evictions. When we're looking at that policy, really looking at those methods and really focusing, especially with families and BPS students, to give them the wraparound services, because when you do find yourself in that sort of situation, you end up disrupting a child's education as well. So wanting to provide more support in those areas. And I don't really see a municipality near us that has really done a good job with that, but we can be the first.
There you go. Thanks, Mr. Ortiz. Councillor Breedon.
Thank you. There's a whole lot here. Well, we could think about maybe the affordable housing overlay that they did in Cambridge. It's still probably in the needs more than further evaluation. I also think that we have, I call it a looming tsunami of elder homelessness, because so many elders are renters, long-term renters, maybe have rented for up to 30 years, and their person who owns the home is maybe an elder themselves, who maybe ends up passing away or going into assisted living. So the Cambridge had a program whereby seniors who maybe were overhoused and had spare space in their homes but weren't able to transition into more like assisted living, didn't have and wanted to stay age in place, that they would actually have young tenants living with them. And it was sort of a social experiment as well. So I think that is another thing that we maybe should look at. And then, of course, we love the idea that we should build more ADUs in the city of Boston.
Cool. Thank you, Councillor Breedon. What are some of the most important ways that Boston's development review process could be made more efficient and less time-consuming? We know that it increases a lot of costs by the time it takes developers to build. So any thoughts on that?
Not me first. I think that when developers are formulating a project, very often they just turn up and present it and say, here, we're going to do this. And then there's a tremendous pushback from the neighbors and the locals. I think that if you work in cooperation with a neighborhood and find out what the particular needs of a neighborhood is, and then build a project that sort of meets people where they're at and tries to address local needs, that I think that's a more beneficial way to go at it. And I think then you would maybe have less pushback from the community. A lot of the processes, like if we had a more generalized transportation planning process, that we wouldn't have to go like project by project by project and look at transportation infrastructure as like a whole cloth, that we would look at in terms of what different projects are coming in and what they need in terms of transportation infrastructure that might help. Because once you get the thing approved, it still takes a year or more to get the thing, the shovels in the ground.
Thank you, Councillor Breedon. Ms. Ortiz?
Thanks. Clarity. I think clarity is one of the things that we can improve. We have, and taking into account clarity for the developer and for the community. We have projects that can be hard to understand. The way that the process goes can be very tedious. You have to be really in the know of your constituent to know like what exactly people are talking about, what the development is going to be. And so that makes it very difficult. So wanting to make sure that we have more constituent friendly wording when we're looking at our development projects, so that people can really understand what the impacts are going to be. And then when it comes to developers, really for them to understand what is it exactly that they need to do in order to have this project move a little bit more smoothly than what we've seen in the past. That means, again, clarity on like Councilor Breadon had said, with transportation and those needs. But more importantly, like, what is it that this is going to bring to the community? A lot of times these conversations, by the time they get to a community conversation, kind of feel like they're already set and done. Or it seems like conversations are happening behind closed doors, where all of a sudden a building is no longer what it's supposed to be, what it was presented to be as. I know there's a home over in, sorry, I'll go over really, really fast. A home over closer to the BC area where we're seeing, it was supposed to have 8 units or eight bedrooms, and suddenly by the end of the project, it had 16. So obviously that kind of disconnect. It was still allowed. It was perfect. It was perfectly legal technically, but obviously not what the community was expecting. So the more cohesiveness that we see within the community and the developer, I think the less anger and frustration we'll see.
Cool. Thank you both. With the keeping the time in mind, I'm going to hand over for the next few questions to Thomas Vosganian from Boston College Democrats. Tom, you can take it away.
All right. Yeah, I'll ask this first question to Councilor Breadon. As the federal government weakens the National Labor Relations Board ability to support striking workers, how will you ensure that Boston not only respects the right to organize, but also helps combat anti-worker and anti-union practices, particularly in the service industry?
I think Boston is a union town, and over the years we've been out on this picket line, especially even over with your graduate student workers over at BC. I feel that the National Labour Relations Board is not functional at the minute because they've basically dismantled it, and so that when there's a question that needs to be arbitrated, they can't go to the arbitration board. They can't go to the National Labour Relations Board to get a decision, which really is very detrimental. But in the meantime, I think as constituents and as consumers and as elected officials, we can indicate that we support the workers, as we found in the whole Jimmy Kimmel thing, where they were pulling his show off the networks in different markets. The consumers found out what businesses were sponsoring those television stations, and then they called them and said, "We're going to boycott you." So there's ways to do it. In this moment where so many of the guardrails are being taken away, we have to be really thinking out of the box and ways to support our workers and to ensure that everyone gets a fair share and gets justice.
All right, great. Same question to Ms. Ortiz.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a strong believer that every industry should unionize. We've seen the success of the hotel workers here in Boston, and that should be a point of inspiration and a point of connection for other groups that are looking to unionize. So really having them come together and really understand, what does that process look like? What are the benefits? Because we know that the benefits are worthwhile for everybody. It's been tough because you see even Newbury Comics, that's right here off of Guest Street in Allston-Brighton. If people don't know, that's their main headquarters. That's where the warehouse is. So all the things that you buy come from the hard work of these workers that are pulling things off shelves and moving things across the entire state and area. But they tried organizing, and they fired one of the main organizers. That kind of went unspoken, unchallenged, and needed a lot more support coming from the city. They had been working with many injustices of hours being cut, 25-cent rate raises, dangerous working conditions. And that is not the type of working environment that we should allow in our neighborhood or anywhere in our city. This is a company that employs young people. It takes advantage of young people who are looking to, make a hard-working dollar, but puts them in the face of danger. So all of these groups really need to come together, and we need to support them and give them the best kind of skills and opportunities to be able to organize and speak for themselves.
All right, great. My next question is, the city has tried to improve transit and traffic with bus lanes, fare-free buses, and bike lanes. Do you support these efforts? Would you support expanding them? And if so, where and what other ideas do you have for improving transit and traffic problems? And we can start with Councilor Breadon.
Yes, bus lanes. I think if you talk to the folks that are drivers at the MBTA, they really appreciate having the bus lanes. The bus lane from Union Square down through Packard's Corner has been a great success. That was one that was installed in 2019, I think, several years ago. The main issue with trying to accelerate the speed of the bus is is just really in engaging with other traffic and people parking illegally in the bus lanes. So I really am in favor of having cameras on the buses and having traffic enforcement push fines on folks who park in the bus and bicycle lane, because it's a bicycle lane as well. The issue, I also think that buses should get light priority at the lights, signal priority, so that they can move through the traffic quicker. The Allston service, the two of the buses in Allston that are the most heavily, and Allston-Brighton that are most heavily used are the number 66 and the 57. The 57 and the 66 are in the top 5 routes in the entire system of the MBTA. So they're really heavily used. And I think that many of us who use the public transit and it's our only way to get to work, etc., they deserve the same respect as other road users, and to be able to get to work quickly. The plan was to try and reduce the travel time from, like, say, Watertown Yard to Kenmore by 10 to 15 minutes. That is a pipe dream at this moment, but I think we have to really seriously look at enforcement as a way to make it work.
All right, same question to Ms. Ortiz.
I have 4 bus lanes. I do think it'd be interesting to see if we can only have them apply for certain hours of the day, like more higher commute areas. Because the Union Square area does make a lot of sense, but we do see that kind of as a high travel area that maybe could benefit from kind of off hours and on hours. And for transportation, I often talk about it, this is an ecosystem. We have very different needs between the two sides of the neighborhood, Allston and Brighton. 50% of Allston owns a car, 70% of Brighton owns a car. Altogether, 38% of us commute by car, looking at it from kind of a daily workflow. So obviously there's a balance here of people who are going to want to need a mix of transportation. We need safer bike lanes. I know people can be bike lane very black or white, but really looking at this as real protected bike lanes, because the more we have, the safer they are, the more people will be using them, the more bikes we have on the road, the fewer cars. The fewer cars on the road, the safer they are. The fewer cars, the faster you'll be able to get to your grocery store, run for your family. No one's making you take a bike, but being able to provide all these benefits together, you'll see this long-term benefit. But we do need to make sure that they are actually protected and not just kind of the painted lines or just the poles that you see that people driving through. And just really quick, when it comes to bus surveillance, I understand the need for it. I do want us to be very careful with it, because as we are talking about kind of police surveillance, this is a road towards that. So we just want to be very mindful as to how we are instituting those type of laws.
All right, and with that, I'll hand us back to Caitlin to close us out.
Hi, thank you. All right, we are ready for our very exciting rapid fire round. These are mostly quick questions. The first one's a little longer, so I'm going to ask you the long question first, and then we're going to have a lot of quick hits. So you have your cards ready. Do you want to show the audience what they're looking for? We have yes and no cards. Great. Okay, so my first question is, there's a bill pending at the State House currently, H3056, and in the Senate S1937, for those keeping score at home. This bill would allow cities and towns to impose a small real estate transfer fee of 0.5% to 2% on high-end properties. If it passes, the next mayor and council would decide whether to enact it or not in Boston. Would you support a transfer fee on property sales over $2 million? Yes, 2 yeses. Great. The rest are much shorter. Do you support ranked choice voting in municipal elections? 2 yeses. Do you support having a fully or at least majority elected school committee in Boston? Okay, 2 no's. Do you support shuttering the Boston Police Gang Database? You may have heard the acronym BRIC. That's Boston Regional Information Center for those. Yes. So Pilar supports shuttering BRIC. And yes, from Ms. Breadon as well. Boston recently eliminated parking minimums for affordable housing developments. Would you support expanding that to all residential developments? Mixed feelings. Since you're both having mixed feelings, I'll allow it. Do you support the legalization of overdose prevention clinics? Yes. Okay, and final question. Do you support the creation of an unarmed emergency response program separate from the police for mental and behavioral health crises? 2 yeses. Great. We have just a few more questions before we're ready to get to your closing statements. One question, residents and small businesses interact with the city in all sorts of ways. What is one way that you would act to improve service or responsiveness for city services? And for this one, I lost track, but we're going to switch again. So we'll just start with Pilar Ortiz for this and then go back to Liz for the next question.
Yeah, I want to encourage everybody, if you do not know that 311 has an app, that is a very useful app. You may see mixed results when it comes to that, but it's very important for the city to have the data so that when we are asking for services, we can say, hey, we've been asking for these. So I want to make sure we have that. When it comes to improving our our city services, the role of city council is to hold all of the city departments accountable. That means we need to be able to hear if, city council needs to be able to hear your concerns, hear where they are failing, and also be able to collect data from the departments on a regular basis to see if they're actually fulfilling that. I think one of the main frustrations we see is, the city getting something done, putting out a press release, and then not really going back to see, was it actually helpful for the community that we're trying to help? Could there have been more? Are there any other learnings that we need to have? And so really wanting to encourage all of these groups and us together as a community to see, hey, great, we got this new affordable housing, we got this new program, we got this new infrastructure. Is it what we needed? And without having that kind of conversation, ongoing conversation, and bringing it back to the city, everyone's going to continue to just do what they think is best for each group without actually making sure that this is right. And again, that means regular reporting, that means regular and holding people accountable to that reporting if they're not doing it, and having better community discussions after the fact.
Great, thank you for your response. Councillor Breadon, how would you propose to improve city services?
Well, I think actually promoting the use of 311 and the 311 app is really critically important. Very often people call us and say, have you called 311? They go, no. And I go like, because that's the way to track it. We also need to think about improvements in our technology so that we can actually map out. I know that they do it. The Department of Information Technology is working really hard to modernize our systems. But again, if you don't actually collate the data that we're collecting and then analyze it, then we don't really know where the gaps are. We need a better communication between the assessing department and the inspection services department. Like the issue we heard about that Pilar mentioned earlier about the building that had 16 units when it was only supposed to have 8. Well, it was only supposed to have 8, but they've added 8 extra bedrooms. And the assessing department doesn't know about that. So we need to figure out how to have different city departments actually talk to each other and share information.
Thank you very much. And I feel like, the IT community have you tried, unplugging it and plugging it in again? And cities, civil servants have you tried calling 311 yet?
And just a quick plug, 311 does release all of its data on a regular basis. Anybody can look into this. You can search for it. I have personally downloaded the last 10 years worth of it. But you are able to see and follow up on your ticket, on anybody else's ticket, and see what kind of issues are important for every neighborhood or on your street even, if you want to get really granular. But that is information that the city puts out on a regular basis.
Great. In terms of the city government, Boston, by the way, has a strong mayor system, but the city council is obviously its own governmental body, not an administrative one. What strategies would you use as a District 9 city council member to resist harmful federal policies or pressure for Trump while effectively protecting Boston's interests and upholding our city's values?
Do you want?
Oh, shoot. So who's going? Who went first last time? You can start. Sorry. I should have written that down.
Councilor, go ahead.
Oh, me. Okay.
Yeah. I think I did the last one. I don't know.
It's one of those things. I think we are the city council is 13 members, 4 at large, 9 district councillors. I think every district has its own flavour, its own challenges, and I feel when we come to interacting, to really sort of ward off the impacts of the federal government's policies at this moment, we have to really talk constantly with our other elected officials at the state level, and they'll also keep in touch with their elected representatives in Congress. So we are in regular communication with Congresswoman Presley and Senator Markey, and then we work closely with our delegation at the state level. So I think really just trying to like we did in COVID. I think COVID was a dry run for this, where we sort of tried to identify what our community needs. And then we went to find resources and connect with resources to help our folks on the ground. And it was a constant sort of push and pull to try and just make sure that we were on top of it all the time.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz.
Yeah, thank you. So one thing to note is what City Council can and cannot do. City Council cannot tell departments how to do their work. What they can do is create and pass the laws that kind of shape our lives and to shape the work of the departments. So it really is to keep in mind those legislative tools that are available. You know, we keep on, as chief of staff of the law department, everything that the City Council passed would go through my desk to stamp and get signed by my boss, by corporation counsel. But I saw a lot of times, excuse me, that City Council wasn't necessarily using what was in their abilities and more necessarily looking at things that would do good press. We need to stop doing that. No more good press. We need real actions and real legislative change. And we need to protect ourselves. And we need to make sure that our laws are conformed to the Constitution, really working with our legal teams to make sure that whatever we pass makes sense and will be defendable in court, because again, we know that we are in the target of the Trump administration. We need to make sure that we have laws that make sense and that won't be overturned later in the courts. So while yes, we need to pay attention to what our communities need, we need to make sure that we are actually using all the levers, because at the end of the game, this is laws, this is legal work, and we've seen the way that the Trump administration has gone after and used those legal arms and gone after individuals and cities that don't comply with his understanding of the laws.
Great, thank you. We're going to actually transition now. We have a few kind of lighter-hearted questions to let the voters get to know you both a little bit. And although this one does deal with a bit of a controversy in the community, I want to know what you guys think of Allston's nickname, Rat City. Quirky monitor and badge of honor, or insulting, moniker and badge of shame? And on this one, we're gonna, I believe, start with Pilar, since you just finished up on the last question.
I get a lot of pushback on this moniker. I think it's my background. I had 10 years of marketing before working for the Wu administration. It's smart marketing. You're seeing the city give resources to other parts of the city. The North End got these rat-proof trash cans because of the amount of trash that they see, and you don't see any within our parks or any in Allston-Brighton. And I think it's a smart way of bringing the community together and highlighting for the rest of the city how bad it is here, because everyone, they'll say there's rats. I myself have stepped into a rat's nest and have rats crawled over my foot. Fun fact. But it is something that is part of our daily lives, and we'll never be able to get rid of all the rats, obviously. But I think the more that we can celebrate our community of coming together and kind of that more or less shared trauma of situations like what I've gone through, in a lighthearted way, while also, doing the work to connect back with the city and get the resources we need. So a big shout out to the Rat City Arts Festival and all the work that they do, because I think they've done fantastic, and obviously they've seen the numbers grow, and that's very exciting, because connection is the way that we're going to build our stronger community and get what we need.
Great, awesome. Councilor Breadon, Rat City, love it or hate it?
I'm fine with it. Not everyone's happy, but I feel that, as Pilar mentioned, it's really a moniker that's working. Like the Rat City Arts Festival group are able to turn out, I think it was almost 100 people turned out on a rainy evening to go on a walk around to teach people about how to dispose of their trash and how to spot something, how to call something into 311, what to report. I feel it's not everybody's cup of tea. Not everybody likes it, but I feel that it's a way to organize and mobilize people to be more proactive in addressing the rodent problem that we have in Allston-Brighton. But I do have to say that I think the rats are fatter in Fenway. I saw a video that Sharon Durkin was on the other day, and I think her rats are definitely bigger than ours. I don't know what the problem is.
Fenway Franks, so that'll do it every time. All right, ladies,
I'll invite you over to my house, Counselor, if you want to see some fat rats.
Thank you, ladies, both so much for answering all of our questions. We're about ready to head in to your closing statements, and we're going to keep the exact same order that we did before, just so that one of you kind of got to open the floor, and now one of you will get to have the last word. So, Ms. Breadon, if you want to give your opening statement.
Thank you, and thank you for the lively questions, and thank you for all the folks that wrote in with questions. I think this is really important to have these conversations as we approach another election this year. I've been very proud to serve as the city councillor for Allston-Brighton. It's been a bit of a ride. I started in 2019. Trump was still in power. We had 2020, COVID hit 10 weeks after I was sworn in, and we were working remotely for at least a year after that. And then we had just 3 mayors. It's been a ride. So it's in all of that, every day when I get up, I work with my team. I have a very strong team working with me. And our work is to see what we can do for Allston-Brighton to make Allston-Brighton a better neighbourhood for everyone. And I emphasize everyone. We have an amazing neighbourhood. It's probably one of the most economically and culturally diverse neighbourhoods in the city. It's a growing population thanks to all the housing that we've been building. We have more families in Allston-Brighton than I've seen in a long time, since all the time I've lived here. And many families, they start a family, they want to stay, and they have anxiety about childcare, they have anxiety about a pathway through our schools, they have anxiety about the cost of housing. And all of those issues are things that we have to address. We have to make it affordable, a livable and family-friendly neighbourhood for those young couples, young families who want to stay in the neighbourhood. We're also thinking about the strength of our schools. There's a few checkpoints that people look at: schools, housing, transit, and childcare. And we have to check all those boxes and work hard to try and improve our infrastructure. We also need to support our neighbourhood businesses and our small businesses that bring vitality to our main streets areas. And also the other issue I have is really working to try and establish an arts district in Allston. We have a long history of arts and culture and music over there. And as part of the district-wide master plan, which was one thing that I asked for when I came in 2020, is to look at an arts district overlay when we look at our new master plan for Allston-Brighton. I want to thank everyone for attending tonight. I'm on the ballot on November 4th, and I'd be honoured to have your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, my name is Pilar Ortiz. I am the child of immigrants. I have lived here for longer than I've lived in any other city, and I am so proud to call this my home. There's many people who were lucky enough to be born here. I had the opportunity to choose to make this my home, like many other people who have come here. And I want to be clear, but the real question we need to be asking ourselves is, when is it our turn? When is it Allston-Brighton's turn? Because for too long, the answer from City Hall has been not yet, maybe next year, maybe 10 years. And that's not good enough for us. We have children who are growing up without good parks. You can compare it to other neighborhoods. Our voices are being drowned out. We're kind of left in the dark on critical development deals. And you see that we have yet to really, we have these conversations, but we have yet to see the infrastructure built, to see the results, the tangible results. And it's not just mismanagement, it's really a failure of accountability. We need to have strong representation that stops letting powerful institutions and kind of the politics get in the way of being able to have that action. We need to be proactive that ensures our community benefits are promised, that they are delivered, and that they are enforced. We need to make sure that we are seeing when we are told something, we have those numbers, we have the trust in our government that it's going to deliver what they said they will. And up till now, it's been talk and talk. I am not running to maintain the status quo. And I've seen too many people be kind of abandon themselves to it and say, well, this is how it's always been. And when I worked in City Hall, that's the answer I got too. This is how we've always done it. I don't think that's a good enough answer for anybody. I was told, it would take too long to get the mayor's interns paid. I did that within my first 3 months working in the mayor's office. Everything takes time, but if you're really focused and really wanting to know how it works, we can get these things done much sooner than they do. So really, the essential pillars to kind of how I work is accountability, affordability, and action. And it's time to end this apathy that we're seeing from being ignored for so long. It's time to have a change. So I really hope that you all come out November 4th. If you are not registered to vote, the last day, the limit is on October 25th. So make sure your friends are registered, because we know what happens when better turnout comes out, more voices are heard, and the community wins. So thank you so much, and thank you for spending this night with us.
Ladies, thank you very much. Thank you so much for all of you for joining us this evening. I hope this has been a helpful forum for you guys to get to know the candidates a bit and their position on the issues. Again, you got some helpful reminders from the candidates there, so not to repeat it too much, but the election is on November 4th. You can feel free, if you enjoyed this event or just want to know more about what's going on in the neighborhood, to sign up for our newsletter at abprogressives.beehive.com. Beehive spelled BEEHIIV. Or you can sign up for Progressive Massachusetts' website, and they will send you our way. And I would just like to end with a little public service announcement. I'm not one who plans ahead, but if you get your Halloween costume now, you can wear it to No King's Day and get 2 uses out of it. So I just think you should take that information, and if you're a procrastinator, go ahead and buy yourself that costume you've had your eye on. Portland's, got its frogs. We got to make a show. So thank you everybody for joining us. I hope this has been helpful, and thank you again to all of our volunteers that helped put this together, and especially our friends at ABHA and the Boston College Democrats. Thank you again for joining us, and have a wonderful evening. Bye.